All right, we got our
Okay.
first participant. 11.
Wow. Oh, they're pouring in. Yay. Hey, everybody. Let's see. If everyone could just hop in the chat and tell us what your name is and where you're coming from, that would be great.
Yeah. By default, the Zoom session, it looks like when you're typing a message, it's only to all panelists. But if you put all attendees, everyone can see your responses and we can all, awesome, Sherry, saw that, nice. Wow, we have a lot of people from all
Great.
over the
Wow. We have
place.
the UK and Seattle and Orlando and Russia and Brooklyn and Ohio,
Oh,
South Africa, Vegas. This is awesome. Colombia, Canada. This is great. Welcome, everybody.
um, we're going to take a few minutes just to let people trickle in. We know some people are still getting coffee from the previous session or taking a little break. So we're going to wait for people to do that. If in the meanwhile you guys are joined in and you also need to get something to situate yourself for our webinar, please do so.
Do it. I have my tea. I'm ready to go, guys.
Okay. I got my I Heart Codecademy mug on the ready.
I wish I took that from the office.
No.
That was
Upper East
great.
Side. Yes.
You're like representing so well right now. Like, I love it. Oh boy, this is.
Mike has his Codecademy shirt too. We're all decked out.
Yeah.
Where do you guys get those the backgrounds again? Is it on Twitter or something? Oh, and Anthony just got my question. That's not cool.
Oh yeah, that's cool background. So some people on our team made them for us. So if you're in Zoom, you can always change your video to have a virtual background, and you can make it any picture you want. I think they have some default pictures if you're feeling fancy today.
Cool. Let's see. Also, as like some ground rules, we're just introducing ourselves right now, which is fine. The chat flows like crazy, so I can't even read the first like 10 messages by this point. If you guys have questions along the way, feel free to go into that Q&A panel, that section on the bottom of the screen. Looks like two text bubbles next to each other, and ask your questions there. We'll have like dedicated time to look into it. Elijah, taking advantage, I love that, is the CSS. Yeah, we'll be focusing on CSS today, and Kyla's going to walk us through our very much Codecademy lessons.
Yep, it's going to be great.
All right.
We have all sorts of people from all over the world. This is awesome. I love it.
How about we wait maybe 1 extra minute or 30 seconds, and then we can get started?
Give a few more seconds, and we'll hop right in.
Yeah. Let's see. In the meanwhile, Kyla, do you want to introduce yourself as the presenter of this webinar?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for loving my background. My name is Kyla. I work at Codecademy. I'm a project manager. I've also written some courses on our website as well, so I kind of know what I'm doing. Oh, people love my hair. Thank you.
You know what you're doing, Kyla.
I live in New York City, but right now I am coming from you live from upstate New York, which is a winter wonderland right now. So I don't know. I saw somebody else said they were from Buffalo, and if you're upstate, woo woo, yeah, you know it's like complete snow covering the ground right now. So
it just snowed there, Kyla?
Yeah. Oh, it's like full on snow covering the ground, the cars, everything, like straight out of winter. It was 60 degrees like 2 days ago. Who would have thought?
That's bonkers.
Oh boy. But yeah, so that's me. I'm going to be teaching you guys some CSS today along with Kenny.
Hey guys. So I'm Kenny. I see some people see me from the previous webinar already. So hi, George specifically, I saw that. I'm a curriculum developer here at Codecademy, and I've worked on a lot of different projects. I've worked a little bit on our CSS course. I've done a lot of JavaScript. The latest courses that I've worked on is Learn Go, which is a programming language from Google, and Learn Swift, Apple's programming language. So a little well-rounded here. CSS isn't my forte either, but we'll see what we can do today. I'm very excited to have you guys all here and to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
If I could just add
Okay.
a quick thing before we get started. I know we'll get a lot of questions about recording. So we are recording this, and we will be sharing the recorded links. We'll post them on YouTube. They might not come out until Tuesday. We just need a few days to like get everything together and make sure it's it looks good. But then we will email everybody who's here, so you will get recordings. And I'm Mike, by the way. I'm gonna go off camera in a minute, but I'll be here to answer some Q&A and help out if it gets busy. But Kenny and Kyla are gonna do the real work here and be your teachers for the next 90 minutes. So enjoy.
Where are
That's in
you
good
at,
hands.
Mike?
Thanks, Mike.
Oh yeah, I'm in Maryland, a little bit kind of in between Baltimore and DC. So
Awesome. Yeah. So the cool thing about you guys joining in today and following along, like Mike said, this will be recorded, but today, and some of you may know this already, we've created free projects for us to jump into for the Learn From Home conference. So the project that we've made available for you guys will be free today and today only. So enjoy that. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So Kyla, can you show them how to navigate to our course or our material for today? I'll also post the link directly in the chat for learners who want to jump straight there, but we have a Learn From Home conference course set up just for today for you guys to make things a little easier.
Yep. So as I share this, okay, so can you guys see my screen okay?
Seeing the floods of yeses, this is a good sign.
Let me just fix my setup so I can see. All right, awesome. So today we're doing the Learn From Home. As you enter the home screen and log in, make sure you're logged in so you can see everything perfectly. You will see up at the top by our catalog, we have a beautiful Learn From Home button. As you click here, you should be able to, oh, let me make sure I'm doing this right. You should be able to go to, oh wait, uh-oh, Kenny, am I forgetting?
So go to catalog.
Yeah,
on the
so you
top.
go to, okay, yes. Enter
And
catalog.
then,
There we are.
there we go, nice.
Learn From Home conference, sorry guys. So go from your home screen to catalog. When you enter catalog, you should see Learn From Home conference. And in here, you'll see the courses. Go right in there. And we're gonna be working on Learn CSS today. So let's even jump in straight from here. Let's go. All right. So we have two lessons in here and a project in here. We were kind of curious what your experience with CSS is. That would kind of help us figure out which one to jump into. So let's start off with a poll. Can we get a poll in here?
How about we do the poll a little later?
Later.
Because
Okay,
Elisa
so let's
is going to help us out. But let's jump into the lesson. Let's get started. Let's talk a little bit, and then we can get the poll.
Okay. So our first lesson here is on CSS selectors and setup. So when you jump in, you should see the very first exercise. And I'll give everyone a chance to get in and get settled in before we hop into the actual lesson.
I also want to mention that for this lesson in particular, our course, we cover a lot more things, but for our Learn From Home course today, we kind of took those lessons and placed them here. And these are like very short intros, but if you want to continue your journey and learn more about CSS afterwards, we definitely have more material at Codecademy, and just browse through our catalog. You can use the search option there's a lot of things to further your knowledge after this webinar as well.
Sorry.
Lisa.
Okay. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, I'm late.
Okay.
But here's a poll for everybody. Launching that now.
All right. So
Yeah,
go ahead and let us know how experienced you are with CSS. And that way we can get a feel for what we should review, what things you guys may already know. Oh, the numbers are coming in. Cool. Oh, we have a few CSS masters. We also have some beginners, which makes me really excited. Great.
Question, because yeah, can you guys see the results of the polls? Give me a yes or a no in the chat. No, you can't see them yet. Okay, that's fine and normal. Thank you so much. As soon as we end the poll, so like as soon as everybody has responded, that's when we'll share out the responses. You'll see them soon.
I see somebody's asking about how to navigate to this course again, so I'm going to go through it one more time because I understand if that was a bit confusing. So you're going to go to codecademy.com and log in. Once you log in, you should be at your dashboard. Once you get to your dashboard, you want to go up to our navigation and go to Catalog, and then select Learn from Home Conference. Go to that course, and you will see the overview and the syllabus. Make sure you're under syllabus. And we are doing Build Websites, Learn CSS. So you want to hop in there. And we're going to go straight into the first, well, we'll go straight into the first lesson, which is CSS setup and selectors. Cool. Make sure you're on 1 out of 17, the very first exercise. That's Intro to CSS.
Okay. I'm about to take off. Before I do, I want to say that we see your post in the chat. I see some that are like, don't go too fast, and some that are like, don't go too slow. I think just like, I mean, Kyla and Kenny are pros. Just let them know, like, hey, that was really too fast, or
Yeah,
we got it. And they'll be responsive. All right, you guys are awesome. I'm gonna go back into Swift now, right? That's all you needed, just one poll?
Yeah, midway through, we might get you in for another just to see how the audience is doing, how the chat's doing.
Yeah, just come, you know, get me.
I gotcha. Thanks, Elisa.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna give everyone just a few more seconds. I hope I'll slow it down so I'm not too fast because I can talk kind of fast.
In the meanwhile, Kyla, can you zoom in a little bit, make your text a little bit bigger?
Yes, I can. Is that big? Too big?
Let's see. Can we do a little bit more? Because I think the code editor might be a little hard to see. I think that's good for me. And then if we're too small, I'm sure the chat's gonna let us know. But I'm seeing some that's good. I'm seeing one bigger.
Okay.
Ooh. So yeah, some of the content here is the material that we've used for the beginning of our CSS. And if you've taken some CSS material already, you might be landing on a different section of this course. So Kyla, can you show them how to navigate using the hamburger menu on the bottom left?
Of course. So as you're on this course, sorry, switch my camera over. You can move through our exercises here. So as you complete the exercises, the next one will be made available to you, but we're starting off with the Intro to CSS exercise inside of CSS setup and selectors. After that is inline styles, and we'll kind of move through just the basics of how to get yourself set up with CSS so that you can actually style a web page. And then from there, we'll keep going into CSS in a more advanced way, I guess you could say, with the actual styling. Cool. All right, is everybody ready? Are we feeling good?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So here's how we're going to kind of do this. And let me know what you guys think. But we're going to go over the narrative together and just kind of get an understanding for what we're learning. And then from there, we're going to review the instructions together. After we've reviewed the instructions, I want to give you guys a few minutes to test it out yourself, and then we'll do it all together. I'll probably give you like 2 to 5 minutes depending on how many instructions there are, to test it out yourself, and then we'll do it as a group and move on to the next exercise. As we continue to do this, eventually we'll just check in with you guys to see how you guys feel like if you have a grasp on things, and we could potentially move on to another lesson, or even move on to a big project that we could do all together. Cool. So let's start off with Intro to CSS, the very first exercise. The basic structure of every web page, HTML, is very plain on its own. The beautiful websites that you see across the internet are styled with various tools, including CSS. CSS, or cascading style sheets, is a language that the web developers use to style HTML content on a website, or a web page, sorry. If you're interested in modifying colors, fonts, font sizes, shadows, images, element positioning, and more, CSS is the tool for the job. In this lesson, you will learn how to select which HTML elements you wish to style and set up for your CSS file structure. Cool. So let's kind of break this down. In our code editor, we have an HTML file and a CSS file. This is what we're going to kind of play around with today to connect our CSS to our HTML and style the HTML file. What you're seeing in our small browser here is an HTML file being rendered, but it does not have any styling with CSS yet. So that's what we're going to work on today. This is like a super basic website that kind of gives me a throwback to like 1990 something. It doesn't have like all the really cool features or like just styles that we're used to in 2020. So we're gonna kind of play around with it and make it look better. So I'm gonna move on to the instructions and then give you guys the opportunity to do this yourself. So take a look at the code and the browser to the right. The code is plain HTML without any styling. Let's take a quick look at the power of CSS. Copy the line of code and paste it on line 5, then run your code. So that code within this box right here is what you're going to copy paste into your HTML file in line 5. So once you copy and pasted it, run your code and see what happens. Take some time to explore and experiment with the code in style.css. So I'll give you a few moments to copy and paste that line of code. It should be pretty quick.
I think some people already did it. Marisa?
Cool. All right, so
Holy
I'm
moly.
I'm going to try it out. Okay. And now I am going to run my code. Oops. Sorry. No. Oh, it's because, sorry. Here we go. I'm going to run my code now. Completely different website. This kind of shows you the power of CSS. It really takes that basic HTML page and turns it into something completely different by styling it. We've changed the images, we've changed the colors, we've changed the font. We even have like a fun button now. So we're going to kind of go over like how that actually happens with CSS today. Personally, CSS is one of my favorites. I just love being able to take like something that looked really basic and make it fun, especially when you show your friends that you just did something like that. You look like a coding genius, honestly. So, anybody have any questions based off of this, or are you guys ready to move to the next exercise? Okay, cool. And right before we move to the next exercise, I just want to go over some other things after the instructions. You have concept review and the forums. The concept review here, you'll always find our cheat sheets here where it applies. Our cheat sheets are a really cool feature. that allow you to kind of like go in and review content that you're going to learn in a lesson. It's really awesome, really great reason to join Codecademy Pro. After that, you'll see the forums, and the forum is a great place to go in and ask any questions. So we're going to kind of move through a lot today here. If anybody has any questions that didn't get answered, a great place to go is the forum to either see if somebody else asked that question and find the answer, or to ask that question and wait for somebody to give you an answer. All right.
So there's a question here in the question panel, I guess, asking, are we supposed to watch along or on the Codecademy website or code along? So I think we can, I mean, it's up to you guys. We're going to allow for both to happen, where Kyla is going to write the code and do all the things necessary to get the passing solution. But if you want to just sit back and relax and watch her do it, go for it. If you want to code along, join in. It's all good.
Yeah. So the next exercise, I actually would love if you guys code along with me. So let's do that. All right, so now we're in the inline styles exercise. Although CSS is a different language than HTML, it's possible to write CSS code directly within HTML using inline styles. To style an HTML element, you can add style attributes directly to the opening tag. After you've added the attribute, you can set it equal to a CSS style or styles you'd like applied to the element. So a lot of you guys were in the previous live stream where we they went over HTML and how that works. So a lot of you are familiar with a tag, but if you're not, our tags are things like the head tag or the body tag. We're going to focus on the tags inside of the body tag. And those are elements like image tags, H1 tags, and paragraph tags. And you can add style right inside of that element. For example, here we have like a paragraph tag with the style added. We've added color to the font, and that color is red here in this example. The color in the example above, oh, well, I kind of explained that. Sorry, guys. I'll hop over to the next paragraph. You might be wondering about the syntax of the following snippet of code, color red. At the moment, these details of the syntax are not important. You'll learn more about CSS syntax and other exercises. For now, it's important to know that the inline styles are a quick way of directly styling an HTML element. If you'd like to add more than one style with inline styles, simply keep adding to the style attribute. Make sure to end the styles with a semicolon. So in inline styles, you can add multiple things. So in this case, we added a red font color, but we can also change the font size. It's really important for your code to work that you have that semicolon following each style attribute, as well as a colon following the property. In this case, color is a property, red is the value. Font size is a property, 20 points or 20 pixels, sorry, is the value. So I'm going to give you guys the chance to try this out yourself. The instructions say, in index HTML, use the inline style to set the font family of the first paragraph to Arial. I'm going to give you guys a hint here. Font family is the property and Arial is the value. So I'll give you guys a chance to try that out. I'll give you 2 minutes or maybe 60 seconds. And after you're done with that, we'll go over it together. All right.
Rudos asked a great question about cheat sheets. So Kyla, in the concept review panel there on the left, do you mind talking about that for just a quick second?
Yeah. So in concept review, you'll find cheat sheets. I'll open up again. And here with cheat sheets, this is a feature that allows us to like review what was inside of that lesson. And if you were saying you're having a hard time seeing it, I believe it's a pro feature. So you may need to have a pro account in order to see it. If you want to try them out, I would suggest trying out our free trial just to like check out what pro is like, and you'll be able to see really cool features like cheat sheets, as well as actual projects and all sorts of other really great stuff. You also will have access to things like our really cool video content, articles, things of that sort. How do you download the cheat sheet? There is the print cheat sheet section here. I would select that. And if you just want to download it so it's on your computer, save it as a PDF. And you'll have this with you, or you could print it and take it with you wherever you want. Yeah. So that's a really cool feature. Shout out to one of our curriculum developers, Sunny, and the rest of the Codecademy team who like helped him make that possible.
Sunny, yeah, some people are coming in from the live stream previously for HTML, so they know Sunny. All right, shall we get started? I'm seeing some people have done.
Okay, cool. So set the font family. We want to set the font family of the first paragraph to Arial. So the first thing I want to do here is find our first paragraph. That's the first P tag here. Now I want to come in. I want to make sure that I'm creating my style attribute and setting that equal to, and always make sure it's inside of quotations, guys. Whenever you forget a quotation, things get wonky. I want to set that font family property equal to Arial, the font. And I want to follow that up with the semicolon. So now when I run my code, it changed. You'll see the change here in the very first paragraph. Cool.
So it's only the first paragraph that changed with Arial, right?
Yes.
Nice.
So it's only my first paragraph because I simply applied it directly to this tag. There are other ways to make it to apply things to all the tags, all the P tags, but we'll get into that a little later. But for now, I'm just focusing on that one paragraph, because say I just want one paragraph to look different than the rest of them do. That's one way I can make that happen. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next one. We're moving. I'm going to take a sip of tea. Okay, this is exercise number 3, the style tag. Inline styles are a fast way of styling HTML, but they also have limitations. If you want to style, for example, multiple H1 elements, you would have to add inline styling to each element manually. In addition, you would also have to maintain the HTML code when additional H1 elements are added. So if I create a website and I have to come back into that website and I want to make some changes, I would have to manually change everything every single time so I can have a consistent style. And that is not realistic. It's not scalable. And that's definitely not what companies actually do with their websites. So we're going to get into how to make things work for multiple elements. Fortunately, HTML allows you to write CSS code in its own dedicated section with the style element. CSS can be written between opening and closing style tags. Use the style tag element. The style element, sorry guys.
You're doing
it must
great,
be placed
Kyla.
inside of the head element. So our head element is here. After adding a style tag in the head section, you can begin writing CSS code. So this right here is what CSS code actually looks like when it's not in line. We're going to practice making that. The CSS code in the example above is changing the color of all paragraph text to red and also changing the size of the text to 20 pixels. Note how the syntax of the CSS code matches for the most part. The syntax you used in inline styling, The main difference is that you can specify which elements to apply to the styling to. Again, the details of the CSS syntax in the example above aren't important at the moment. You will learn about the details of CSS syntax later in this lesson. So, in later lessons, sorry. So, the key here is that we've now applied this to all the paragraph tags instead of just one. I noticed someone said, what's font family meaning? So earlier in the last exercise, we added the font family. The font family was Arial, so that changed this to being Arial font types instead of the Times New Roman that is like the default text, the default font. So in this situation, what we want to do is start applying styles to more tags. So let's hop into these instructions. The first instruction, first add a style element inside of the index.html file. Then make sure to delete the inline style you added to the paragraph. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to do that while I do that too. So I want to find my head element that's here, and I want to add style to it. The key is making sure I have both my head tag and my close tag. So I've now added that style tag, and I want to get rid of what I had before because we don't really need that for the rest of this lesson. So get rid of that inline style that changed the font family, and we're going to run that code. Cool. And then in our next set of instructions, it says add the inline styles you removed from the P tag element to the style element in the head. So just in case you guys didn't remember, we changed the font family to Arial. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. I suggest, as a hint to yourself for the formatting, checking out the syntax in the example here. So I want to give you guys the chance to recreate that by making the paragraph tags have a font family of Arial, and give you guys 60 seconds to look that up, to try that out, and then we'll do it together. Fiona asked, how do I get into the next lesson, i.e. the style tag lesson? So we're all within the same lesson. This is the next exercise. The way you want to do that is making sure that you've gone through the instructions and completed that. Once you've completed that, you can hit the next button. It'll highlight once you've completed your instructions, and then you can move on to the next exercise. Okay, so I'm going to change that font family inside of the style tag now. So I want to let my HTML and CSS know that I'm addressing all my P tags, all my P elements. And then I want to create the actual CSS code. So I need curly brackets to do that. Inside of my curly brackets, I want to change the font family to Arial, right? And have a semicolon after this. I know that this is incorrect, and I'm going to show you why. Actually, it may not be incorrect. It just depends on the browser you use. But I'm going to run this, and it actually did change this because I am using a pretty new version of Chrome. But some of you may need to do this to make it run. If you feel like you're running into any weird things, it might be your browser. But yeah, the value should be Arial. My property is font family. My value is Arial. Cool. So now that both of my instructions have been addressed, the yellow button here, the next button, I can hit that now and move on to the next exercise. Cool. Someone asked, how would this work if the CSS is on a different file and not on a style tag? We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. You're ahead of the game. Some of you CSS masters are like popping up out of nowhere. But we're going to get to that. There is a way to have CSS on a different file. Okay. Someone is following along on an iPad, and they're having some trouble. So I would suggest, I'm not exactly sure what Zoom looks like on an iPad, to be very honest with you. I suggest coming back to this when it's recorded and uploaded on Tuesday, and that'll give you the chance to kind of check out what we did and possibly follow along on a desktop or a laptop. Can I go full screen, please? Yes. Is that better, Valencia? Okay. Why do the brackets have to be on separate lines? This is a great question. Oh, Valencia's still having a hard time seeing. I'm going to address Andrew's question in just a second. Valencia, I'm in full screen and I've like zoomed in some. Hopefully that helps you see. If you're still having trouble viewing, I'm really sorry about that. We might have to, you might have to wait for the recorded version of this. We see your picture. Is my screen not sharing?
No, you're fine, Kyla. Your screen is shared. I'm seeing it, but people also have the option of clicking on different panels and seeing which ones they choose to have as their main screen. So maybe that's that's what's going on there.
Cool. All right, so I want to address Andrew's question back in exercise 3. So Andrew asked about like just the formatting of the syntax. We had these curly brackets on different lines, and the reason being, I mean, you could technically do this and it could work like sometimes. Let's run that. Because really, yeah, so you could do it like this, but when you code like this and your format is really like dense, after a while of having lines and lines and lines of code, it can get really difficult to read your code and if you're doing this out in the wild, oftentimes you're coding with a partner, and when you hand off your code to another person, you want to make sure it's clean and easy to read. So the default setting, this is kind of just like, you know, globally accepted, is to have your CSS formatted this way, where your brackets open up and all of your properties and values fall inside of it. It just makes it a lot simpler to read. It's really easy to say, okay, where are the stylings for all P elements? You can easily find P and find out how they're being styled. So that's why we have it like this. It's not going to necessarily be incorrect if you don't have your CSS formatted like this, but it's technically not the professional way to code. Most languages have like funny little formatting and like ways to create your syntax that are kind of just widely accepted. If you're ever curious about that, I would suggest checking out like MDN. They kind of have the documentation for things like CSS, HTML, even Python, JavaScript, and things like that. Why is only one paragraph affected? Let's see, if I run this, that should not be the case. Oh, you're right.
Well, if we scroll down, yeah.
Question. Oh, well, here's the reason why. When I look at my HTML code, this is the only P tag. These, while we can visually see this as a paragraph, it's not actually a paragraph, it's a div tag. So if I wanted to change this, right, to P, I would have to make sure I changed both my opening and my closing, and I ran this code. It would now be a P element, and it would also take on the style that I created above. If you want to stop the poll from popping up, you should be able to close it. Yeah, and that should be.
I stopped sharing now. I wonder if that was maybe the issue where we just kept sharing before.
Yeah.
So hopefully that takes care of it. Sorry about that, guys.
Someone asked why only one paragraph affected. Yeah. So I went over why only one was affected. Hopefully that's clear now, but someone also asked, why is it called index HTML? That's just, I really don't, I don't know who decided that like landing pages or like the first page of your HTML will be called index.html, but that's also like a, that's a question worth Googling. That's also like kind of one of those widely accepted things where if you have a single HTML page or you have like a home page for your HTML page, it's often called index.html. I guess it's just your starting page, it's your index. Will CSS work in the VS editor, Visual Studio? Yes. I love using Visual Studio for CSS. Is it okay that we put it on lesson 3, not the same color as Kyla's? Yeah, absolutely. You can make it, unless, so you want to make sure you're following the instructions so that your code passes. But if you want to add color or something like that, be my guest. We actually love to see you guys do stuff like that. So have fun with it. You can follow along with me, but if you want to do something a little different, or you want to try something new, feel free to do that. Just know that if you're having a trouble moving on to the next exercise, it might be because it's still waiting for you to say like font family Arial so that it knows that you did what you're supposed to do. Okay, so we're going to move on to exercise 4. How are things going? Ooh, we have 352 people. Great. We're all here. Exercise 4, the CSS file, or the .css file. Developers avoid mixing code by storing HTML and CSS code in separate files. HTML files contain only HTML code, and CSS files contain only CSS code. You can create a CSS file by using the .css file name extension, like style.css. So we do have a style.css file here. We're going to have fun with that. With a CSS file, you can write the CSS code needed to style a page without sacrificing the readability and maintainability of your HTML file. So like we talked about a little bit earlier, you know, we could style every single element on this page. We could style the title, the image, we could have a heyday, the bullet points, everything. This would become a very, very big, heavy file if we did that, and it would also become really, really difficult to read. So we're going to take our style and put it inside of style.css instead. This is the final way that you can add CSS to an HTML file, and honestly, in my opinion, it's one of the best ways if you have a lot of styling that you want to do. So here, I'm going to give you guys a chance to take a whack at the instructions while I answer some questions. Take a look at the HTML file, the index.html file. Cut the CSS code in between the opening and closing style tags and paste directly in the new file called style.css. Make sure to delete the remaining style element, which is now empty, from index.html. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to play around and do that while I answer some questions. Ali asked, why is the text blue? Zoned out, all good. We've all been in a classroom before. Somebody asked earlier, like what other things you can do with CSS. So I just showed them as an example that you can make the color blue. It's not necessary. I just was having some fun. So we answered that. Can you do a CSS style sheet and use inline too? You can, Donald. You can, but I wouldn't suggest it. Well, I guess there might be use cases where it's completely necessary, but unless it's completely necessary, I wouldn't suggest that. It's best to have all your code in one place. Like I mentioned before, a lot of times when you're coding in the wild, you'll create something, put it out there into the world, and then come back to it maybe months later, or you'll work alongside somebody else and have to share code with them. And it's just easier to read and maintain when your code is organized. And it's kind of difficult to keep track of your styling if you have it in both a CSS file and inside of your HTML. download as, which do I prefer? I personally prefer having it inside of a file, inside of its own CSS file, but that's just because I like keeping things super organized. I removed the style section from the HTML doc, but when I run the code, you keep getting an error message. Okay, let's go over this. So yeah, I have that same thing coming up, but that's because I haven't actually done what it asked me to do. So let's break down these instructions. I'm having the same issue as you, Samantha, so let's go through this together. We want to remove the code that's within our style tag first, right? And add that to our CSS style. So I'm going to do that. When I pasted it, it got funny. And like I said, I like to keep things organized. So let's just fix the way that looks. So yeah, we could do that. So I've now taken that, the actual style out of HTML and added it to our style.css file. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to my HTML and I want to delete this element, the style tag here. We're going to delete that just because we don't want to have any lingering empty tags. We don't want that. That's just not a very good way to practice coding. So now that I've done that, I want to run this again, and I've now passed that checkpoint or instruction, sorry. Cool. So Samantha, I hope that answered your question. Someone said I still can't set my VS Code to the Codecademy theme. Ooh, that is something I would suggest putting that in the forum so we can address that here, address that there. But yeah, there is a Codecademy theme for VS Code, which is really awesome. But I don't want to get into that because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page with CSS. I would suggest that for now you follow along with us inside of the LE, or just go without the theme for now. Cool. Let's move on to the next exercise. Awesome. So now we're going to link our CSS file. So you'll notice that even though, if I go back to exercise 4 and run this again, even though I put the style inside of the CSS file, it did not change our p tags. Like, it didn't change our p tag up here. So the reason being, our HTML file and doesn't know our CSS file exists yet. So that's what we're going to do in exercise 5. Linking the CSS file. Perfect. We've successfully separated the structure, HTML, from the styling, CSS, but the web page still looks bland. Why? These HTML and CSS code are in separate files. The files must be linked. Otherwise, the HTML file won't be able to locate the CSS code, and the styling will not be applied. You can use the link element to link HTML and CSS files together. The link element must be placed within the head of the HTML file. It is a self-closing tag and requires the following 3 attributes. href. Like the anchor element, the value of this attribute must be to the address or path to the CSS file. Type. This attribute describes the type of document that you are linking to, in this case, a CSS file. The value of this attribute should be set to text/CSS. rel. This attribute describes a relationship between the HTML file and the CSS tag file. Because you are linking to a style sheet, the value should be set to style sheet. When linking an HTML file and a CSS file together, the link element should look like the following. So in this example here in the narrative, we have our link element. We have our href attribute, our type attribute, and our rel attribute. So we're going to recreate that to connect our index HTML file to our style CSS file. Note that in the example above, the path to the style sheet is a URL. So we actually use like HTML.com, I mean HTTP as like a whole link in this example, but that's not always going to be the case. It just depends on the actual path to your CSS file. Specifying the path to the style sheet using a URL is one way of linking a style sheet. If the CSS file is stored in the same directory as your HTML file, then you can specify the relative path instead of a URL like so. And here you can see the difference. We have that href attribute with a value of ./style.css because that's a different path. It's a relative path. And that's pretty much saying, like, in our file directory, go into that file directory and find the file called style.css and connect that to this HTML document. Using a relative path is a very common way of linking a style sheet. So I want to give you guys a chance to go through these instructions and try to link your CSS file to your index.html file. Yeah, go ahead. I'll give you guys a chance and I'll answer some questions. Somebody asked about our YouTube channel. Yeah, you can find us. We're Codecademy on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Codecademy, you'll find our channel. And there you'll see lots of fun videos that were created by developers all across the world who've used Codecademy in the past, and they're teaching things, all sorts of really fun, like tech and code related subjects. So you guys can find that on our YouTube page whenever you have some free time. We all have a lot of free time right now, so. Okay, Pranav, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, asked why was that error popping up? Was it a specific question or was it CSS or was it syntax related? I don't have an error yet, but if you are seeing any errors on your screen, it's probably related to the kind of the question and the syntax. Making sure that you're answering the question that was like asked, so you're doing exactly what that question asked with the correct syntax will make sure that your errors don't pop up. If you're seeing any weird errors still, I would suggest just resetting the code in that exercise and starting from the beginning. Peggy asked, can you show the CSS file again? Yes, I can. Yes, this is what your CSS style should look like here.
Ella, can you also quickly walk through how to get the solution in case learners keep trying it, but not getting it?
So if you're ever super stuck and you're banging your head against the wall, check out our Get Help section here, or Get Help button, sorry. And there is a section called Solution where you can get your solution code. I suggest using this as a last resort. I'm personally one of those people who are like, don't tell me, I can figure this out. So I would try to wait if you can, but if you're stuck, at any point you can use that. And if you feel like you fell a few steps behind us here and you're trying to catch up, feel free to use that as well. Okay, Kofi asked, and sorry, I hope everybody's able to get that CSS file here. I'm going to go back to it to show you guys, but I want to answer Kofi's question. He asked about the relative path in the editor. So, well, let's just hop into these instructions. Here in this code editor, we are going to use a relative path, I believe. Wait, am I being crazy? Yeah. And also, if you're doing this outside of Codecademy.com and like VS Code or something, you're going to use a relative path. But let's just go over this. Let's link the style sheet style.css to the HTML file index.html. First, add the link tag or the link element within the head tag. So again, we want to focus on the head element, and here we're going to add link. Like we mentioned before, link is a self-closing element. So it doesn't need, you don't need to do this. There shouldn't be any close element. This isn't necessary. And that's why I'm getting a bit of an error here. It's a self-closing tag. So now that I've done that, I want to run my first step, run the code for the first step. The second step is Next, add the href attribute to the link element and set it equal to style.css. So here, I don't need to use like a URL. Our file is right here. If you ever click on this icon here, you can see the file directory. It's already within our directory, so I can use relative path. And I'm going to set that to style.css. Let's run it. Cool. What page? Now I'm going to add the type attribute. So that should be style sheet, because that is the type of file that we're linking to. Oops. I did that wrong. So this is where I made a mistake. The type is not style sheet. Style sheet would be the rel attribute. The type is text/CSS. So I'm going to go back and change that to text/CSS. That is the type of file that we're linking to. And I'm going to run that. And now my code is correct. So if you're ever getting an error, just make sure your syntax is correct. Make sure you're actually answering the question, and then run it again, and the error should go away. So now that I've done this, I'm seeing a bit of a problem here because my p tag has not changed. In my style sheet, I asked for any p tag to have a font family of Arial. So I'm going to run that too. Run that also. My issue is that I haven't addressed the fourth and final step, which is adding the rel attribute. So I want to give my rel attribute the value of style sheet. And once I run that, my CSS is completely linked to my HTML file now. So as you can see here, my first p tag is, it has the font family of Arial. So yeah. Cool. I'm gonna answer some more questions. And let's see here, Manuel. Why does a link need 3 attributes? Feels like type and rel should give the same info. This is what HTML needs in order to actually read what it needs to do. So the type just tells you what type of file that the CSS is, but the rel shows what the actual relationship between the HTML file and the CSS is going to be. And this is us letting the HTML know that your relationship with CSS is for CSS to serve as your style sheet. Honestly, I'm not sure what other use cases you'd actually have as a relationship between HTML and CSS. I've never tried that before, but I'm assuming that there might be other relationships you could possibly have that saying like, okay, even though this is a cascading style sheet, you're not using this as a style sheet right now. So we're just letting it know not only what type of file it is, but what the relationship to that file should be. Andrea asks, what about having a closing slash to a link tag? So that would actually cause an error because it's not really necessary when you kind of look at our use case here to even have a closing tag, but links don't expect to have a closing tag. If you have a closing tag there, you may pull an error because it should not be there. The link is all about linking to files, and all the information we need are from the attributes. There's nothing that would fall in between a imaginary closing tag and opening tag for links. Nothing goes here. So this closing tag isn't necessary.
Let's expand on that. Oh, sorry.
Say it again.
I think Andrea also means like, what if we have the / at the very end of the opening link tag?
The way we do for image,
Yes.
That is a great question, honestly. So if you do that, I don't think it would run an error at all. And to be really honest with you, I don't know why that doesn't have
There's
a slash at the end. I think you can do that, but it's not necessary to run. And I understand, because with an element like the image element, you do need to have that, because if we don't, that could run an error. Kenny, do you know?
Sure. Yeah, I think there, so I posted in the chat a little forum discussion that people were having about break, the BR element needing a / and some needing not.
Yes.
I think this goes back to styling and what you prefer. Largely, it's optional in both these cases. As we've seen, it's worked in both cases. So depending on how you want to keep this consistent styling throughout your project and how your team members prefer this, that is probably the thing that you're going to adhere to throughout.
Thanks, Kenny. I actually really like that you said that too, because we are using it at the end of an image tag. So if I want to be consistent and organized, I would add that too. Awesome. Cool. And what Kenny might be referring to, for those who don't know, is that BR tag. So that's like a break. It just creates like an extra space. So now we have more space between the line with Florence, Italy, and the quote above. So
thanks for clearing that up.
Cool. Yeah, so let's see, what other questions do we have? Scott asks, are type and rel attributes just a descriptor, or does the value we put in matter? It does matter. So if you guys recall before, I accidentally put style sheet here. That is not a value that type is prepared to handle. So if we add that as a value for that attribute, HTML is going to be like, it doesn't compute, because that is not, that's not an accepted value for that attribute. So it is important that you have a value here and that it is the correct value. Jonathan asks, what does rel stand for? It stands for relationship. So the relationship between the two files. Elijah asks, if we can't tell the difference between the fonts, is there another way to see if the code is working? Yes. So if your code is acting a little funny and you can't see the difference, you can say sans serif here. Sans serif is, sorry, is it sans? Sans. It's a another way of just pulling up a different type of font. So our font here, this is sans serif. If you're a typography nerd like me, sans serif is kind of more simple, like block text, whereas serif is a little fancier. It has like the Y's look a little fun, and they have like fun little tails on the ends of them, and the T's look more sophisticated. That would be a serif font. But if you don't want it to have a serif, it would be sans serif. Is it sans with an S or sans with an?
Sans. I think it's sans with an S.
Sans,
but
yeah,
this might be a good time to look up some documentation too.
It would. Yes, it surely would. So let's check out MDN CSS. So if you ever want to, you could actually Google this too, MDN CSS. This is really cool documentation that like goes over CSS, the ins and outs of it. It's awesome. We love to see it. And you know, there's a lot of information here, like on everything related to CSS. If you ever feel like this is a little too overwhelming for you to go into this, we would suggest checking out our cheat sheet as well, where you can also find information about CSS, but specifically with questions about like fonts and things like that, we can look up different font families. So if I search like font family here, yeah, it'll give me a rundown on different types of fonts. We've all probably seen like Times New Roman before, or like Open Sans before. Georgia is a type of font. Georgia is a serif font. So if you ever are using a serif or sans serif font and the browser isn't accepting that font name, I mentioned earlier that sometimes you need to put it inside of quotations, but it's also really helpful to add serif or sans serif afterwards. So when going through the cascading style sheet, it reads it like font family, Gil Sans, sans serif. So if it doesn't know what Gil Sans is, it's going to look for another value here that it can replace Gil Sans with, just in case. And that is why you'd want to add sans serif here if you're not seeing Arial. It might just mean that your browser is kind of confused as to what Arial is. It doesn't know. So adding sans serif should change your font. And it could possibly look like this. Like if I didn't have Arial here and I ran it, it will still give me an Arial looking font. Okay. Is this helpful? Is everyone learning something? Perry asked, is the dot// optional for the relative path? So great question, Perry. Perry's referring to here in the narrative, we have dot/CSS, style.css. Here we don't have that dot/. We don't need it here. Let's get into directories. So we have our HTML file, we have our CSS file. If I had, let's see, can I do that here? How would I do that? If I had a new folder, and let's say I had a folder and I decided to call it CSS, and I put all my CSS sheets inside of this. So say I had style2.css, why not? And I had that inside of that CSS folder. In order to access that one, I would need to do, here, let me move this so it's easier to read. I would need to do style2.css to access this style sheet. Reason being, I'm in my index file, I need to tell it to go into, or actually, let's see, did I do that right? Yes, I would need to tell it to go into, oh, no, I did not do that right, sorry. I would actually need to do CSS / style2.css in order to access this CSS file. It's empty, so let's change this to color red and run it. Now I don't have my Arial font anymore, and my text has turned red because I accessed it by saying, okay, we're in our HTML file. From there, go into the CSS file, and when you're in there, look for style2.css and use that as your style sheet instead.
Can we take a pause for a quick second there too? If we take a look at style.css, style2.css,
yes.
Even though we had an error, notice that red dot to the left, because we have an extra bracket, our browser still kind of understood what we were talking about and still translated that code to make sense for itself. So there is some funky behavior like that. It's a little forgiving in times like this, but it could also make it a real big pain to narrow down and like hone in on what the specific error is.
Yeah, if I added more code to this style2.css file, if this was like 100 lines of code, this would be that moment where I'm like, what is wrong? What is wrong? Certain browsers might be forgiving and say like, I understand what you mean, especially if they're newer or smarter. But some browsers, it may not work at all. So I'm gonna get rid of that because I want it to work on all browsers regardless of any issues. And there we go. So I hope that like kind of explains. So the .css, what that would mean is if HTML was inside of a folder, leave your folder and go find a new folder. That dot is the root in the file directory. So it's saying start from the very beginning of this file directory and go look for this. So if I had it as .style ./style CSS and I ran it, it would actually use this CSS file because it's saying, hey, start from the root, which is just the files file, and find style.css. If I did that with style2, it wouldn't work because style2 is hidden inside of another folder. I hope that answered that question for you guys. File directories can be funky. That's another one of those things that you want to keep nice and organized, because if you don't, you may be doing absolutely nothing wrong except for forgetting to call the right file. Someone asked if you write HTML first and then CSS next. You don't have to. It just depends on your workflow, really. I like to personally start with my HTML and then my CSS, but sometimes when you're actually working on a project, you'll create your HTML, work on your CSS, and realize there's some things you need to change in your HTML. So there's no order to it, but the CSS will only be able to call what has been created in the HTML. So you kind of want to make sure your basic structure is down before you start styling it. All right, let's move on to the next one. These are great questions, guys. I'm now on exercise 6, tag name. CSS can select HTML elements by using an element's tag name. A tag name is the word or character between HTML angle brackets. For example, in HTML, the tag for a paragraph element is P, or P inside of our little alligators. The CSS syntax for selecting P elements is P with the curly brackets here. We went over that earlier. In the example above, all paragraph elements will be selected using the CSS selector. The selector in the example above is the P. We're selecting all P tags. Note that this CSS selector matches the HTML tag for that element, but without the angle brackets. So when we're creating a selector for anything, if I want to create a selector for an image tag, I am just grabbing the actual text from that selector, not the this would be incorrect. In addition to curly braces follow immediately after the selector, and opening and closing brace respectively. Any CSS properties will go inside of the curly braces to style the selected elements. So let's hop into these instructions again, guys. In style.css, add a selector for the H1 elements. Go ahead and do that. So here you want to have your selector. I like to keep you don't need to have a space, but personally I like to have a space just to make it easy to read. I want to follow up the H1 tag or selector, with the curly braces. Let's run that code. Awesome. Now, inside of the curly braces of the H1 selector you just declared, write color maroon. This code will make the text color of all H1 tags maroon. So color maroon. Let's run it. It ran correctly. So now we can identify which ones were H1 tags. We have our H1 tag as the title, top vacation spots. If you wanted to, you can make this blue, you can make this any color. There's also like hexadecimals and plenty of other ways to identify color. But just to make it easier, we're going to actually type out the color name. If you ever go back to MDN, you can look up like color for CSS here and find all the different ways to color your CSS. One of which would give you a list. It's in here somewhere. I don't want to waste everyone's time with that too much, but there's all sorts of colors that CSS identifies and knows. But there's just certain things that it may not. If I said periwinkle blue, I don't know. Did I spell that right? I think so. Yeah, it doesn't know periwinkle. It knows light blue. So there's certain colors it will accept and certain colors it won't. All right. Okay. some people ask, what is hexadecimal? So a hexadecimal is when you use like 6, that hex, when you use 6 values to decide what a color is. So there we have complete like lessons on this, and it like how our exercises on this and other lessons. There's all sorts of combinations you can use to create a color. In this situation, I just created red. There's all sorts of types of red. Well, that's kind of hard to read. Let's try that. There's different versions of red. Why isn't this? Let's say I did, let's see what color this makes. It's like a funny blue. I can make it more blue or make it a different color by playing around with that. In order to know like exactly how to make different colors, I would suggest checking out that lesson, and it kind of gives you a bit more of a rundown of how to read hexadecimals, how to create them, how to make fun colors, like orange. I believe this would make orange. Nope, yellow. See, it's kind of hard to just tell, which is why we're just using titles right now. Why did we add the H1 tag? So if we go back to our index here, if you look at your HTML, index.html, we already have an H1 tag here. In CSS, we're calling on that, we're selecting with our selector H1s, and we're giving them the color of maroon. Rachel, oh my God, your last name's so fun. Rachel, both of the next sessions are interesting to me, but can I attend both? Yeah, so Rachel's asking about like the sessions and how she can view them. We're recording all of our sessions. They'll be available around Tuesday next week. So you can pick whichever one interests you most right now and check out the one that you missed next week. Yes, thank you, Sam. Sam, you're awesome. Sam shared the color value on the MDM file. So they have all sorts of fun colors that you can use, and they're all here. So these are the colors that CSS automatically knows. There was a time, like the earliest versions of CSS, where you couldn't really do that, but now with newer CSS, with smarter browsers, this is why it's really important to update your browsers, guys. You can now just give a keyword instead of having to do the hex value. So for example, beige, this is the hex value. I honestly, there's just no way I'm going to memorize that. So now instead of having to go figure out what the hex value is, I can just say beige. And same with maroon. I think they have maroon on here. Or not. That's okay. But yeah, maroon is one of those colors too. Magenta is one of those colors as well, you know. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. How are we doing? How are we feeling about this? We good?
Kyle, I think we're running into the last 5-6 minutes though.
Okay, oh boy.
Well, before we go, because I know there was also a question about like posting the question and answer session that we had here. But you guys can also access the forum. Yeah. And there will be a section for Learn CSS, and we can also ask and answer questions there. And that's not just to us, but the entire community as well. So Kylie, would you mind showing how to like navigate to the forums potentially?
So when you're inside of the lesson, we have community forums here, and you can go in here. Now this link here is going to take you to the forum for this specific course. That is one way to enter the forum, and you'll be directly linked to the forum related to that lesson. But you can also go to the actual homepage of the forums, and you can see like the latest stuff that people have created. We have forums on anything from Python chatbots to C++ functions to hashes. You can start your own forum. You can search through the forum and try to find something related to what you have a question about. It's a really, really, really awesome tool. I believe that this is only available for people who have Pro. So if you're using a free account right now, correct?
No, the forum should be free.
It's free? Okay, so I believe that this is available if you have a free account with us. You should be able to go in and ask questions. Yeah, it's all right here. And since we have to wrap up, we have to go soon. If you have any questions related to this course that weren't answered today, or you decide to move through the rest of this and any questions pop up for you, go ahead into our forum and ask some questions there. You could get a response from me, from Kenny, from another learner halfway across the world. It's really awesome. It's a great place to just, get in touch with the community. So yeah.
Cool. Kyla, do you mind if I grab the question from Melinda about these lessons being available for free or today or pro only?
Yeah.
So the lessons themselves, we took from our CSS course, our Learn CSS course. And if you want to continue them on your own, I know a lot of people are showing that interest in doing that in the chat. So feel free to pursue that. We've only taken the beginning sessions, and the lessons overall are free to all users, whether you have a free or pro account. We've included a project. We kind of teased at the beginning that we might do it, but based on all your questions that we had and everything that we wanted to answer, we just didn't have time for it. But for the duration of today, they're gonna be free, okay? The projects will be free for today for Learn CSS. After today though, they'll go back to being pro only. Okay, so take advantage of it while you can. And I hope that answers Rachel's question as well. Let me know.
Just one quick thing about the community. So the community forum is definitely all free for like all aspects of it. I also, in the chat, I posted a link to a Discord chat room, which is connected to our forum, and that's also free. So just scroll up a little bit and you'll see a Discord link. Feel free to jump in there and chat with our with other people in the community, our moderators. There's a lot of activity in there.
And I see one other question about accessing this. Just one more time, if you go to our Codecademy homepage and make sure you're logged in and signed in, you will find the catalog. Oops, sorry, go back. The catalog, and in the catalog, inside of the catalog, we have the Learn from Home conference, and there you can see all the lessons, projects, and everything that people are covering today. We did Learn CSS, so if you go in there, you'll find the lesson that we covered today and the project that's related to that lesson. Cool.
So Mike, while you're here, can you answer Christy's question about how long the pro scholarships will last?
Oh yeah, I just typed up a response, but we don't yet know. We don't really know how long this pandemic's going to go on. So all I can tell you is that it's going to be up for a bit. We have no plans to take it down, so there's no definitive date where it's going to come down. So consider it up and active for the time being, and that's about what we know right now.
All right. Wow. Okay, guys. So now that we answered all those questions, I just want to see, I'm going to stop sharing now, but I would love to see, just by a raise of hands, who learned something today. Feel free to raise your hand in the chat and let us know if you learned something. Feel free to share in the chat what you learned. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I hope I got to as many questions as possible. I really appreciate you guys participating, asking questions, and following along, because it's just really awesome to get to see people all over the world coding together at one time. It's really fun. So I'm glad you guys learned something. Yay! You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, and please don't just stop coding today. A lot of us are, self-isolating or quarantined at home. like take this time to learn something new. Learn some CSS, learn some HTML, learn some JavaScript. You know, create a web page just for the heck of it. It's fun, and it's a really awesome way to like build your skills and take this time and have something productive come out of it. So, you know, like somebody asked earlier, we do have some scholarships that are going out. So if you have one of those scholarships, please take advantage of it and enjoy getting to learn to code for free. Ooh, someone has a 29-day run streak. We love it. We
Wow.
love it. Thank you. That is awesome. Keep going. Yeah, build your streaks up. Honestly, I would love to see like who can have the highest streak. I wonder if we have that information ever, like what was the highest streak on Codecademy ever?
I think we did like an interview with that person, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'm very curious.
Oh, we have 20, 40 days? Yes, that's great. 80, wow. We also have one. Someone said one, and that is great.
You gotta start somewhere,
You gotta
right?
start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Make tomorrow too. First day, yes, that's awesome. Awesome. Cool. Yay.
I think I'm gonna wrap up here.
Yeah.
But take a 5-minute breather. We'll start the next webinar sessions at 1:30. So if you're gonna be there for JavaScript, Introduction to JavaScript, I'll see you there. Just to continue on with this building websites track.
Yes.
And, we also have 2 data scientists from Codecademy who are working on a live stream to show you how to forecast Google Trends using a programming language, a statistics language called Learn R. Okay, so.
I just posted the links to the others in the chat, though there's a typo. They're not starting in 20 minutes. They're starting in a few minutes. So, but the links are good. So just follow those to go to the next sessions.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. This is where I leave you. It was great teaching you guys CSS. It was great working along with you guys. So Vi, please, 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 like follow Kenny along to JavaScript, or if you're really interested in analyzing like Google Trends, that also sounds really awesome. So check that out too. Yeah, all right. We'll let you guys go.
All right.
Look forth and prosper. Bye, guys.
Bye.